Minji stood in the sterile hospital corridor, her hands trembling as she clutched the envelope containing her father's medical bills. The numbers had become unbearable. 300 million, won and counting. Her mother's tearful face haunted her thoughts as she made her way to the administrative office, where an unexpected visitor waited. The woman wore an immaculate black suit, her silver hair pulled into a severe bun. She introduced herself as Mrs. Kang, representative of the Kang family. Her proposition was delivered with clinical precision. Marry her son, Kang Jae-hyun, CEO of Kang Industries, currently in a coma following a car accident. In exchange, all of Minji's family debts would be erased, and her father would receive the best medical care available. Minji's mind reeled. She had heard of Kang Jae-hyun. Everyone had. At 32, he was Seoul's most eligible bachelor, brilliant and ruthless in business. Now he lay unconscious, and his family needed a wife to fulfill a clause in his grandfather's will. The contract stipulated she would remain married until he awakened, if he awakened. Should he never wake, she would stay for 3 years, then receive a substantial settlement and annulment. Mrs. Kang's eyes were cold but desperate, revealing family politics Minji couldn't begin to understand. She thought of her father's labored breathing, her mother's exhausted face, her younger brother's abandoned university dreams. The walls seemed to close in as she stared at the pristine document before her. "I need 24 hours," Minji whispered. Mrs. Kang's lips formed a thin line, but she nodded, placing a business card on the table before leaving in a cloud of expensive perfume. Minji remained frozen, the weight of an impossible choice crushing her chest. 23 hours later, Minji signed the contract in a law office overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. Her hand barely shook as she wrote her name, having cried all her tears the previous night. The marriage ceremony was conducted in Kang Jae-hyun's hospital room 3 days later, a surreal affair with only Mrs. Kang, the family lawyer, and 2 nurses as witnesses. Minji wore a simple ivory dress borrowed from her mother's closet. As the officiant spoke, she studied her unconscious groom. Jae-hyun was striking even in stillness, his features sharp and aristocratic. Machines beeped rhythmically, monitoring his stable but unchanging condition. When instructed to place the ring on his finger, Minji's hands trembled. His skin was warm, alive, yet he remained impossibly distant. The kiss was omitted. Instead, she touched her fingertips to his forehead, a gesture that felt more honest than any ceremonial performance could have been. That evening, Mrs. Kang escorted her to the Kang family estate in Gangnam. The mansion was a fortress of minimalist luxury, all sharp angles, imported marble, and floor-to-ceiling windows. Minji's quarters occupied the East Wing's 2nd floor, 5 rooms of elegant isolation. Her bedroom alone was larger than her family's entire apartment. Mrs. Kang established the rules with mechanical efficiency. Minji would visit Jae-hyun daily, maintain public appearances as needed, and speak to no one about the true nature of their arrangement. She was to learn everything about her husband, his business, his preferences, his life, so she could convincingly play the devoted wife should circumstances require it. That night, Minji lay in silk sheets that felt like ice, staring at her wedding ring. The diamond caught moonlight, throwing fractured rainbows across the ceiling. She had sold her freedom, but purchased survival. The distinction felt meaningless as silent tears finally came. Minji established a routine within days. Each morning, she arrived at the hospital by 8, bringing fresh flowers and a thermos of tea. The nurses grew accustomed to her presence, nodding sympathetically as she settled into the chair beside Jae-hyun's bed. She would read to him, news articles first, then poetry, eventually novels. The hospital room became her strange sanctuary. Outside, Seoul rushed past in its perpetual frenzy, but here time existed differently, suspended in the space between heartbeats. She studied his face during these hours, memorizing the slight scar above his left eyebrow, the way his chest rose and fell with mechanical assistance. Mrs. Kang had provided extensive files on Jae-hyun's life. Min-ji devoured them, learning about his education at Harvard, his meteoric rise in the company, his reputation for brilliant but merciless business decisions. Photographs showed him at galas and corporate events, always composed, rarely smiling. The media called him Seoul's Ice Prince, yet nothing in the files explained who he truly was, what made him laugh, what kept him awake at night. The documents revealed achievements, not humanity. On the 7th day of her vigil, Min-ji began talking to him directly, softly confessing her fear and confusion. She described her family, her abandoned dreams of becoming a photographer, the weight of the decision she had made. The words flowed easier than expected, released into the safe silence of his unconsciousness. She told him about the cherry blossoms blooming outside, how spring had arrived indifferently, how the world continued its rotation despite everything. Her voice became steadier with each visit, finding comfort in the one-sided conversations. The nurses assured her that coma patients sometimes heard voices, that her presence might matter. Min-ji chose to believe them because the alternative, that her words dissolved into nothing, was unbearable in its loneliness. 3 weeks into the arrangement, Min-ji encountered Jae-hyun's younger sister Soo-jin in the hospital corridor. The woman was breathtaking, dressed in designer casual wear, her expression sharp with curiosity and something darker. Suspicion, perhaps, or resentment. Soo-jin's greeting was polite but cold, her eyes assessing Min-ji with predatory precision. She made no secret of her skepticism regarding the sudden marriage, though she stopped short of direct accusation. Instead, she mentioned how convenient the timing seemed, how remarkable that her brother's condition had prompted such swift legal arrangements. The implication hung between them like smoke. Min-ji maintained her composure, years of poverty having taught her how to endure scrutiny. But Soo-jin's presence introduced a new variable into the equation, a reminder that the Kang family dynamics were more complicated than Mrs. Kang's clinical presentation suggested. That evening, Min-ji researched Soo-jin online, discovering a socialite deeply involved in the family business, ambitious and capable. The articles hinted at tensions between siblings, corporate rivalries, questions about succession. Jae-hyun's accident had clearly disrupted carefully laid plans, and his mysterious bride represented an unknown threat. Min-ji realized she had entered not just a marriage, but a battlefield. The Kang family wealth had attracted predators and schemers, and everyone would question her motives. Her humble background, her father's debts, everything made her suspect. She was the outsider who had appeared at the perfect moment to exploit tragedy. Sleep eluded her that night. She stood at her bedroom window, watching Seoul's lights glitter like scattered diamonds, feeling impossibly small. The contract had seemed straightforward, a transaction, nothing more. But human complications were bleeding through the legal language, threatening to drown her in consequences she hadn't anticipated. Tomorrow she would return to Jae-hyun's side, where at least silence offered safety. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday afternoon, 43 days after the wedding. Min-ji was reading a newspaper article about emerging technologies when she noticed it. A barely perceptible flutter of Jae-hyun's right hand. She froze, uncertain whether she had imagined the movement. Then it happened again, stronger this time, his fingers twitching against the sterile sheets. Her heart hammered as she pressed the call button frantically. Nurses rushed in, followed quickly by Dr. Park, the neurologist overseeing Jae-hyun's care. They conducted rapid assessments while Min-ji stood pressed against the wall, hardly breathing. The medical team's excitement was palpable but professionally contained. Dr. Park explained that the movements indicated increased neural activity, a potentially promising development. However, emergence from coma was unpredictable. It could happen gradually or suddenly, or these signs could lead nowhere. Hope was permitted, but not guaranteed. That evening, Min-ji sat closer to the bed than usual, her voice softer as she resumed reading. She chose poetry this time, verses about spring and renewal, words that felt like prayers. Hours passed. The hospital settled into its nocturnal rhythms, quieter but never truly silent. Then, near midnight, it happened. Jae-hyun's eyes opened. Just briefly, unfocused and confused, but open. Min-ji gasped, leaning forward. His gaze found her face, and for 3 heartbeats, they looked at each other. She saw no recognition in his expression, only profound disorientation. His lips moved, forming a single word that emerged as barely a whisper. Min-ji. The world tilted. He had said her name, despite never having met her while conscious. Before she could process this impossibility, his eyes closed again, his face relaxing back into unconsciousness. But something fundamental had shifted. Dr. Park confirmed that speaking was an extraordinary sign of cognitive function. Min-ji remained frozen, replaying that whispered syllable endlessly in her mind. The next 72 hours were a blur of medical assessments and cautious optimism. Jae-hyun's periods of wakefulness grew incrementally longer, though he remained largely unresponsive, his awareness flickering like a struggling flame. The family gathered, Mrs. Kang maintaining her composed facade, Soo-jin oscillating between relief and calculation, various cousins and executives appearing to demonstrate concern, while clearly evaluating political implications. Min-ji observed from the periphery, uncertain of her role. She was his wife legally, but a stranger in every meaningful sense. Yet whenever Jae-hyun's eyes opened, they seemed to search for her face before finding focus. On the 4th day, Dr. Park declared him stable enough for limited interaction. The breathing tube was removed, replaced by nasal oxygen. Jae-hyun's first fully conscious words were questions. Where, when, how long? The answers clearly devastated him. 3 months of life erased. His world had transformed during his absence, and he was expected to simply accept the new reality. Mrs. Kang handled explanations with characteristic efficiency, outlining business developments, medical expenses, and legal complications. When she mentioned the marriage, Jae-hyun's expression became unreadable. His gaze shifted to Min-ji, studying her with an intensity that made her want to disappear. Later, when they were briefly alone, he spoke to her directly for the first time. His voice was rough from disuse, his words carefully chosen. "I'm told you've been here every day." Min-ji nodded, unsure what else to offer. "Thank you," he said, and something in his tone suggested the gratitude was genuine, untainted by the complicated circumstances. "This couldn't have been easy for you either." His unexpected kindness nearly broke her composure. She had prepared herself for anger, suspicion, resentment, not understanding. The walls she had built around her heart developed new cracks. 2 weeks later, Jae-hyun was discharged. Physical therapy had restored much of his strength, though fatigue still overwhelmed him unpredictably. The drive to the family estate occurred in tense silence, Mrs. Kang making occasional comments about arrangements, while Jae-hyun stared out the window as if seeing Seoul for the first time. The mansion felt different with him present. Staff moved with renewed purpose, the entire household reorganizing around his schedule and needs. Jae-hyun's own quarters occupied the West Wing, a mirror image of Min-ji's rooms, but decidedly more masculine in aesthetic. Dark woods, leather, minimalist artwork. The question of sleeping arrangements went unaddressed. They maintained their separate spaces, connected by marriage, but divided by everything else. Mrs. Kang had arranged for them to share dinner daily, enforcing the appearance of normalcy. These meals were excruciating exercises in polite conversation, both of them performing for the hovering staff. Jae-hyun spent his days in gradual re-entry. video conferences about business developments, physiotherapy sessions, meetings with lawyers and accountants. Minji kept her distance, uncertain of boundaries. She had grown accustomed to his unconscious presence. His awareness changed everything. But in the evenings, she noticed him watching her sometimes. A furrow between his brows suggesting he was solving a puzzle. Once, she caught him holding the poetry book she had read aloud at the hospital, his expression contemplative. On the 6th night of his homecoming, he appeared at her door near midnight. Minji answered in her sleeping clothes, mortified and confused. "I remember your voice," he said quietly. "In the darkness, I remember your voice reading to me." "I thought I was dreaming, but it was real, wasn't it?" Minji's throat tightened. "Yes, I read to you almost every day." He nodded slowly, processing this information, then retreated without another word, leaving her shaken. Jae-hyun was methodical by nature, and the mystery of his accident demanded answers. He spent hours reviewing police reports, insurance documents, and surveillance footage from that night. The official conclusion was straightforward. A drunk driver had run a red light, causing the collision. But something troubled him about the details, inconsistencies that nagged at his reconstructing memory. Minji watched him grow increasingly absorbed in the investigation, recognizing familiar patterns from the business files she had studied. When he worked, he became utterly focused, the world narrowing to whatever problem demanded solving. She understood this drive intimately. It was how she had survived poverty, by concentrating solely on immediate necessities. One afternoon, he invited her to his study, spreading documents across his desk. The gesture surprised her. He had been cordial but distant since returning home, keeping their interactions minimal. Now he sought her input, explaining his suspicions about the accident's circumstances. Minji listened carefully, her photographer's eye catching details others might dismiss. She pointed out anomalies in the timeline, questions about the other driver's identity and sudden disappearance. Their conversation flowed naturally, unexpectedly easy. For the first time since meeting him conscious, she glimpsed the brilliant mind everyone described. As evening approached, Jae-hyun leaned back in his chair, regarding her thoughtfully. "You're observant," he noted. "The files my mother provided didn't mention that." Minji stiffened slightly. "What did they mention?" "Your father's illness, your family's financial situation, your employment history at a photography studio." He paused. "But not what you're actually like as a person. I've been trying to reconcile the woman who agreed to this arrangement with the woman who sat by my bedside for months." The vulnerability in his admission caught her off guard. She had expected judgment, not curiosity. "People rarely fit neatly into categories," Minji offered quietly. "No," Jae-hyun agreed. "They don't." The board meeting was Minji's first public appearance as Jae-hyun's wife. Mrs. Kang insisted she attend, emphasizing the importance of presenting a united front. Shareholders and executives needed reassurance that the CEO's personal life was stable, that his marriage was genuine rather than some desperate legal maneuver. Minji wore a tailored navy dress, her hair styled elegantly, feeling like an imposter in borrowed clothes. The conference room was intimidating. 35 board members watching her entrance with varying degrees of skepticism. Soo-jin sat near the head of the table, her expression unreadable. Jae-hyun handled the meeting with practiced authority, fielding questions about his health and recovery, outlining his phased return to full-time duties. When discussion inevitably turned to his sudden marriage, he addressed it directly but revealed nothing substantive. His ability to deflect while appearing transparent was masterful. Minji remained silent throughout, as instructed, her presence serving as visual confirmation rather than requiring participation. But she noticed the power dynamics at play, alliances and rivalries, those who seemed relieved by Jae-hyun's return and those who appeared disappointed. Their opportunity for advancement had closed. Afterward, in the car returning home, Jae-hyun exhaled heavily, his composure slipping now that they were alone. "You did well," he said. "I know that was difficult." "Everyone was evaluating whether I'm a gold digger," Min-ji replied, unable to suppress the bitterness. "Yes," he agreed bluntly. "But that's not your concern. Let them speculate. The only opinions that matter are ours, and we know the truth of our arrangement." His pragmatism should have been comforting, but instead it highlighted the transactional nature of their relationship. They were business partners, nothing more. The realization stung more than she expected. That evening, unable to sleep, Min-ji stood on her balcony watching the garden below, feeling profoundly lonely despite being surrounded by luxury. The truth about Jae-hyun's accident began emerging in fragments. His private investigator uncovered evidence suggesting the drunk driver had been paid to cause the collision, not to kill, but to incapacitate. The revelation transformed everything from tragic accident to calculated attack. Family dynamics deteriorated rapidly. Suspicions fell on various board members, business rivals, even people within the Kang household. Trust evaporated, replaced by paranoia and accusations. Jae-hyun became simultaneously more guarded and more dependent on Min-ji, who remained demonstrably uninvolved in family politics. She found him in his study late one night, surrounded by documents, his expression haunted. "Someone I know tried to destroy me," he said without preamble. "Someone I probably trusted." Min-ji sat across from him, uncertain how to provide comfort. "What will you do?" "Find them. Make them answer for it." His voice was cold, the Ice Prince reputation suddenly making perfect sense. But beneath the hardness, she detected profound hurt, betrayal's unique wound. On impulse, she reached across the desk, her hand covering his. The gesture surprised them both. Jae-hyun stared at their joined hands, then slowly intertwined their fingers. Neither spoke. The silence held weight, acknowledging something shifting between them, their relationship's foundation cracking to reveal unexpected possibilities. "Mrs." Kang's interruption shattered the moment. She entered without knocking, her expression troubled, carrying news about another business development requiring immediate attention. Jae-hyun withdrew his hand, snapping back into professional mode, but his gaze lingered on Min-ji as his mother spoke. Later, alone again in her rooms, Min-ji pressed her palm against her chest, feeling her racing heart. She was developing feelings for her contractual husband, a complication neither of them could afford. Their arrangement had clear boundaries. Emotion threatened to destroy that careful structure, but knowing the danger didn't diminish its pull. The investigator's final report arrived during breakfast. Jae-hyun read it in silence, his expression darkening with each page. When he finished, he handed it to Min-ji without comment. The conclusion was devastating. Soo-jin had orchestrated the accident, working with a disgruntled former executive to eliminate her brother and clear her path to control of Kang Industries. Min-ji felt sick. She had sensed Soo-jin's ambition, but hadn't imagined this depth of ruthlessness. Jae-hyun's face was a mask, but she saw the anguish beneath. His own sister had tried to kill him. Mrs. Kang was summoned. The confrontation that followed was brutal, conducted in the study with Min-ji present at Jae-hyun's insistence. He presented the evidence methodically, watching his mother's composure finally crack. Mrs. Kang aged years in moments, the facade of control shattering. Soo-jin was arrested that afternoon. The family's private shame became public spectacle as media descended on the story. Sibling rivalry turned criminal, attempted murder cloaked in business strategy. The scandal consumed Seoul's attention, Kang Industries' stock plummeting as shareholders panicked. Through it all, Min-ji remained at Jae-hyun's side. He had become increasingly dependent on her steady presence, the only person in his world with no ulterior motives. Their arrangement had paradoxically made her the most trustworthy person in his life. One evening, exhausted from managing the crisis, Jae-hyun finally broke down. Minji held him as he wept, his grief pouring out in harsh, painful sounds. She said nothing, offering only presence, her hand stroking his hair while he mourned his shattered family. When the tears subsided, he looked at her with raw vulnerability. "Why are you kind to me? The contract doesn't require kindness." "Because you're human," she answered simply. "And you're hurting." The truth of her words hung between them, intimate and undeniable. In the scandal's aftermath, Jae-hyun made unexpected decisions. He restructured Kang Industries' leadership, promoting based on merit rather than family connections. He established new oversight protocols, transparency measures designed to prevent future betrayals. The changes were revolutionary for the traditionally conservative company. More surprisingly, he approached Minji with a proposition, not a contract this time, but a genuine question. Their original arrangement's terms had been fulfilled. Her father's medical care was secured, her family's debts erased. She could seek annulment now if she wished, walking away with the agreed settlement. He would not contest it. The offer was delivered in his study, his expression carefully neutral despite the tension in his shoulders. Minji realized he was terrified of her answer, though he hid it well. She took her time responding, considering carefully. The past months had transformed her understanding of everything: wealth, power, marriage, herself. She had entered this arrangement as a transaction, but somewhere along the way it had become something else entirely. "What do you want?" she asked finally. Jae-hyun's composure slipped. "I want you to stay, not because of any contract, but because you choose to. I want to try building something real, if that's what you want too, but only if you want it, not out of obligation or gratitude." His honesty was devastating in its sincerity. Minji felt tears threatening, emotions overwhelming her careful control. "I'm not who you would have chosen," she said softly. "I come from nothing. I bring no business connections, no useful family ties. I'm nobody." "You're not nobody," Jae-hyun countered, moving closer. "You're the woman who stayed when you could have run, who showed kindness when it wasn't required, who sees me as a person, not just a position or fortune. That's everything." Minji's heart cracked open, hope flooding in like light. They started over, dating despite being married, a reversal that would have been absurd if it weren't so necessary. Jae-hyun took her to galleries, remembering her abandoned photography dreams. He bought her a professional camera, encouraging her to pursue the passion she had sacrificed. Minji discovered his unexpected gentleness, the dry humor he revealed only in private, his passionate discussions about architecture and urban design. The Ice Prince was a media creation. The real man was far more complex and considerably warmer. They talked endlessly, excavating each other's histories, sharing stories that revealed the people beneath their roles. He learned about her childhood in poverty, the resilience it had demanded. She learned about the suffocating expectations of wealth, the loneliness of being valued only for utility. Their first real kiss happened at sunset on the mansion's rooftop garden. It was tentative initially, then deepening into something profound. Recognition, acceptance, desire finally permitted its voice. When they separated, both were trembling. "I love you," Jae-hyun whispered, the admission clearly terrifying him. "I don't know when it happened, but it's true." Minji touched his face, her own emotions overwhelming. "I love you too. Against all logic, I do." They laughed then, at the absurdity of finding love in such an impossible situation. Their marriage had begun as a contract, but was transforming into something neither had anticipated, a genuine partnership built on respect, trust, and growing affection. That night, Jae-hyun appeared at her door again, but this time she invited him in. No contractual obligations, no family politics, just two people choosing each other freely. She took his hand, leading him inside, closing the door on everything outside. The future remained uncertain, But for the first time since signing that contract, Min-ji felt genuine hope. 6 months later, they renewed their vows in a small ceremony with only close friends attending. Min-ji wore a dress she had chosen herself, cream silk that caught the light beautifully. Jae-hyun's eyes never left her face as they spoke promises they actually meant this time, not legal obligations, but genuine commitments. Her family attended. Her father recovered enough to walk her down the aisle, beaming with pride and relief. He had worried about her sacrifice, but seeing them together now, the love evident in every glance, his concerns dissolved. Kang Industries stabilized under Jae-hyun's reformed leadership. The scandal had damaged the company's reputation, but his transparent handling of the crisis and subsequent changes earned grudging respect. He proved himself not just a capable executive, but a leader worth following. Soo-jin's trial concluded with a lengthy prison sentence. Mrs. Kang had aged dramatically, the betrayal having broken something fundamental in her. She maintained distance from Jae-hyun, their relationship perhaps permanently damaged. He mourned this loss, but was learning to accept what couldn't be repaired. Min-ji's photography career flourished. She opened a small studio, specializing in portraits that captured her subjects' essential humanity. Her own experience of being misjudged, reduced to surface assumptions, made her uniquely talented at revealing deeper truths. Her work gained recognition, exhibitions and commissions following. They made their marriage real in every sense, moving into shared quarters, blending their lives, planning futures together. The separate wings of the mansion became symbolic of a past they had transcended. One evening, standing together on that same rooftop garden where they had first kissed, Min-ji leaned against Jae-hyun's chest, his arms wrapped around her, both watching Seoul's endless lights. "No regrets?" he asked softly. "None," she answered truthfully. "You?" "Only that I didn't wake up sooner." She smiled, tilting her face up for a kiss. What had begun in darkness and desperation had somehow become light and hope. Their love story defied every expectation, but that made it no less real, perhaps more so, having been tested so thoroughly. The contract that had bound them was long since fulfilled and forgotten. What remained was choice, renewed daily, to continue building their life together. In the end, that was the only vow that truly mattered. Seoul glittered below them, full of possibility, as they stood wrapped in each other and the future they had chosen.